Prime Minister Narendra Modi has touched down in Moscow. It's his first visit to Russia since its invasion of Ukraine. New Delhi hasn't condemned the war, but it's advocated a peaceful solution and remains a key trading partner. Trade between the two sides sharply increased to $65 billion in the last financial year due to strong energy cooperation. Vladimir Putin will no doubt be using Modi's visit to demonstrate to the West that he isn't a pariah on the world stage.
Narendra Modi will visit Russia today. It's his first trip to Moscow since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has tested relations. Analysts say the visit suggests a continuation of Mr. Modi's push for India to be a global power, a bridge to the West, and a counterbalance to China. Neha Punya has more.
For a decade, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been credited with elevating India's global presence, wooed by world leaders and cheered by the Indian diaspora on every visit. During Modi's last two tenures, India hosted the G20 presidency for the first time, began an outreach to countries in the global south, became more firmly aligned with the US and Western allies, but also maintained its historic ties with Russia, refusing to vote against Moscow at the UN over the war in Ukraine, while still buying deeply discounted Russian oil in the face of threats of Western sanctions. Analysts say this muscular foreign policy approach will likely continue in Modi's third term as well. He isn't shying away from engaging with Russia at the start of his new term. This is despite Washington expressing concerns about New Delhi's military and trade ties with Russia. So speculation that Russia is trying to help India de-escalate tensions with China. Moscow has been pushing to revive a Russia-India-China trilateral dialogue, a precursor to BRICS, but that grouping has not met since 2020, when Indian and Chinese troops were involved in a deadly conflict in eastern Ladakh, sparking a border standoff that remains in place today. Tens of thousands of troops are now stationed permanently at that disputed site.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is heading to Russia for his first visit since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Modi's trip will include a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom he last met in Russia in 2019. India is a major buyer of Russian arms and has also become a key buyer of Russian oil following Western sanctions placed on Moscow over its actions in Ukraine. While Prime Minister Modi has not condemned Russia, he is under pressure to secure the release of Indians allegedly misled into fighting for Moscow in Ukraine. Reportedly lured they were with the promise of lucrative jobs and education, but they did end up on the front lines.
Mr. Narendra Modi is visiting Moscow for a bilateral summit with President Putin. It's Mr. Modi's first visit since Russia's war with Ukraine began more than 2 years ago. Well, our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg told us what we can expect from this visit.
Well, I think it's certainly very important for Vladimir Putin. It gives him another opportunity to claim that attempts by the West to isolate Russia over the war in Ukraine have failed. You know, the Kremlin doesn't miss an opportunity to do that. Remember last month, Vladimir Putin was in North Korea and then Vietnam. Last week, he was in Kazakhstan, meeting the leaders of China and Turkey and Qatar. Last Friday, you had the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban flying to Moscow for talks with Vladimir Putin. And today you have the leader of the most populous nation in the world and one of the world's fastest growing economies, India, flying to Moscow for talks with Vladimir Putin. He'll sit down at the negotiating table, do deals with Vladimir Putin, and that allows the Kremlin to say, basically, isolation, what isolation? So important for Vladimir Putin. I think trade, boosting trade, boosting economic ties are going to be very high up on the agenda. This is an India-Russia summit which has been held for many years now, but there has been a break. And the fact that the summit is back on now, I think, is a reflection of the fact that both sides, both countries believe it's important, it's in their interests to boost trade. We know that already Russia is selling a lot of oil, high volumes of oil, to India at a discount because Russia's access to Western markets is restricted because of sanctions. So that's important as far as Russia goes and has been very profitable for India. But I think India will look now to boost its exports to the Russian market.
Narendra Modi has arrived in Moscow on a two-day visit. This is his first visit since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. India hasn't publicly condemned Moscow's actions, but has called for a diplomatic solution. Mr. Modi is planning to hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin this evening. India's maintained close ties with Russia despite pressure from its Western allies.
Narendra Modi is visiting Moscow for a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The planned talks come despite a push by Western countries to isolate Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. India's foreign ministry says Modi's visit will last for 2 days. It's his first official trip to the country since the invasion began in 2022. New Delhi has often been a partner to Moscow in areas including defense. It has repeatedly abstained from UN resolutions demanding Russia withdraw its forces from Ukraine. India has also been bolstering economic ties with Moscow and increasing its imports of Russian oil. It's thought that Putin is hoping to strengthen bonds with India amid the confrontation with the West. His meeting with Modi may also be a way for him to make inroads with the global South. New Delhi is seen as a leader of the countries.
Thank you for watching. If you like the content of this channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.